Hey everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Today we're going to be talking more about the new firmware beta that was released by Rode this week. I've already put a video out about this, but yeah, I had quite a few questions and comments and things like that coming back, so I thought might as well dedicate another live stream to it and just have a bit of a general geek out, really. So love to hear your feedback if you've been using the beta so far, and if you've used any of the features or indeed encountered any issues. There's a couple of things that I've noticed, but that is obviously the point of beta firmware, is to find out these little things. So I'll be talking about that as well. And so, yeah, let's just get straight on into it, shall we? But first of all, I do have to say, hey, Vicky, great to see you. Always love seeing the pictures of your your setup. Never gets tired, that doesn't. I always feel a little bit inadequate with my two stream decks. Hey, Dragon, great to see you here as well. Haven't seen you around the block for a while, so great to see you in here. Hope all is doing well for you. So let's start talking straight away, shall we then, about this new firmware update. The links, by the way, to download this, if you haven't seen it already, are in the description. To get onto the firmware beta program with Rode, there's no sort of barrier to entry. You just literally go to the website that is linked down below, and then you can just go and apply to it. Download the firmware. It is obviously beta, as I say, so there may be some issues with it. That is the point of betas. You will find instructions, though, on the Rode website as to how to go back to a previous version if you're finding there's anything that's stopping you from doing what you need to do. Hey, Steve, great to see you in here as well. Fantastic to see you on the live stream. Good luck with the beta update. It's pretty painless, really. It's a pretty swift process, and then you'll get access to all of the things that I'm going to be talking about today. So the main thing that was added in this version then was this advanced audio routing, or also, should I say, a sort of building on the audio routing that we had in the previous firmware update. And what I'm talking about there is, if I come into this top-down shot, then it's in this outputs and then the routing just here. Now, the way that this worked before was we just had the options for basically the 3 USB channels and the Bluetooth, and we could choose between whether those were going to be mix minus or not. And just to reiterate again, for those that may be not so sure what mix minus is, that is where you've got multiple different things coming in on all these different channels. So you've got your mic, you've got the USB, you've got various other different inputs coming into the Rodecaster. Then if you're using the Rodecaster with communication apps, what you don't want is the thing that is coming in from that particular app to be going back out to it. So what I mean by that is, if you're using your Rodecaster with Zoom, for example, and you've got the in Zoom, you've got your mic set to the Rodecaster and you've got the speaker set to Rodecaster as well, then if you didn't use mix minus, then the people from Zoom would be coming through into the Rodecaster, into the mix, and then would be feeding straight back into Zoom again through the mic input. And so what that would mean is that they would then hear themselves back slightly delayed, and this is known as slapback. And so mix minus basically takes all of the inputs that are coming in through all of the channels, and then it removes the one from that specific channel so that it's not being fed back to it. So it'd mean that it's basically feeding everything back through to, in this case, Zoom, except for the feed that's coming in from Zoom. So it is minusing that track from the mix going back to Zoom. So that's what mix minus is. So in a previous firmware update, they turned on the mix minus for the USB Bluetooth channels, so the 3 USB and the Bluetooth channel. So we had that, but they also gave us this thing called the custom mix, which basically enabled us to, in fact, it looked pretty much just like this: main, mix minus, and custom. And what custom allowed us to do was basically just decide exactly which tracks we wanted to be going, or which channels I should say we wanted to be going down to this channel. So in this case, Bluetooth. Before, if you recall, then with custom you could choose which channels to include in the mix for that particular channel. Well, what they've done now is they've taken this a step further, because basically they've opened up, as you can see, the custom mix to all of the channels now, and by that, all of the sort of listening, I suppose, channels. So we've got all of the 4 headphones, so that is these 4 here, and they've all got obviously a jack socket on the back for these 4 channels. We've also got the monitor, so that is where you've got external monitors plugged into the speaker ports on the back. You've got the left and right speaker port. The recording, so we can also control what is actually being recorded versus what is that is to the device rather, as opposed to what is going out to all of these channels. And then we've got those 4 channels as we had before. But they've taken it a step further because what we actually have is, if I come into one that's not going to affect what we're doing, this one, in the custom mix now, instead of just having basically a toggle to decide whether something is going into the mix or not, we can now adjust these levels independently. And so I'm making this live stream, as I say, because I had a number of questions that came up before. And one of the questions was specifically around this, and to maybe go into a bit more depth in terms of explaining how these all work. So if you can see at the moment, in fact, what I shall do is I'll just take off some of these things that I've got on at the moment. I'll just pop those down and just make this a little bit simpler to understand, hopefully. Let me just come out of here for a second. There you go. Can you tell I'm really prepared? I'm just going to do this just so that we don't have any of these sort of listen commands switched on at all. In fact, there I've just noticed something, that even though I'm listening to that channel, this seems like a beta thing. I'm still hearing other channels as well, which shouldn't happen. So that is a beta bug that I need to file. Anyway, let me come back into here, outputs, routing. There we go. We're back to where we were. So if I come into this USB channel, what you can see here is effectively on the screen here, we've got something that looks like the position of these faders as they are at the moment. In fact, what I could do, if I just come into here a minute, I'm just trying to make this as simple as possible. So if I come into faders, what I'll do is I'll just actually delete this from here, put none on there, and I'll put none on that one as well. So there we go. Now we've just got it nice and simple with just the 6 faders. So this relates to these 6 faders here. Sorry for that. Just thought I'd make this as I say, simple as possible. So now you can see that we've got 6 faders, and those 6 images there relate to the 6 faders down here. And what you can see is that as I'm moving these up and down, so if I move this one down, you can see how it is moving up and down on here as well. So this is showing the position of the physical faders on the device. But what we can actually do is, this is showing where these are, for everything at the moment. But what we can actually do is we can set a different level for this on a channel by channel basis. So at the moment, we're looking at the USB secondary channel. This is where everything is. We've got custom selected, but we haven't changed anything yet. But what I can do is I can come into this particular channel. And if I just zoom in a little bit to make it easier to see, I'm going to tap on this channel. And now you can see that the sort of fader has been highlighted green. That means that that is the sort of active fader that we're going to be adjusting. And then if I dial down with this dial, you can see that I am moving the position of that fader. Now, what that's going to mean is that this is adjusting the effective level for that channel. So now what you have to think is that, for all intents and purposes, on the USB 2 secondary, it is as if the fader is actually down here. So we've changed the level, but it's only changed it for that particular fader. So if it was changing it for everything, you would hear the audio going down. Or if I change my mic, for example, I can turn the fader down here. And for the secondary channel, it has got my mic now a lot lower. But obviously, you are still hearing my mic perfectly well. You're hearing it exactly the same as before. If I was to come into the primary channel for a second, because that is the one that you're hearing right now, what you'll notice is if I click on the main mic, if I turn the main mic down, then this is actually turning it down for you. So you've now heard that my volume has gone down, even though I haven't touched the fader here. So we're changing the sort of faders on a channel by channel basis. Now, why is that something that you might want to do? Well, for example, if you are streaming, gamers often stream listening to music where they don't want the music to go out in the stream, or maybe they want the gameplay to be at a higher level, or maybe they want to have Discord running in the background and they want to change the level of that, the Discord feed coming through into the main mix. These are various different cases where you might want different levels going into one thing versus another. For example, my podcast as well. When I live stream my podcast, I go in after the fact and I actually sort of restart the intro music and the outro music. I put it in a different place because when I'm actually starting the podcast as a live stream, I hit the music when I'm starting to stream, but then it takes a while to propagate to go to LinkedIn, and then it also goes to Amazon. And so after the fact, I go in and chop off the beginning and chop off the end, and then I kind of reset the music. So what I may want to do is then have it so that although that audio is going out into the live stream, I maybe don't want to just include it in the recording altogether, and I can just remove it. So I would be able to set a different level for that audio track, for example, in here. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can use this. So at the moment, you'll see that we're back to this USB 2 channel. I've set a relative level here. So we've got that little white marker there showing that although the fader is physically up here, that's the top level, the audio that is going out onto the through this track is actually significantly lower. But because they've got this sort of blue bar between them, that is signifying that they are still linked. And in fact, this little icon here that looks like a link very much so is also another reason, that another way that is displaying that. But what that's going to mean is that as I move this fader, in fact, let me take this one that's not going to affect your audio. What you'll see is that the physical fader position is going up, but also it is dragging up this fader going out onto the secondary USB. So although we've got a different level on that particular track going out onto the USB 2, the secondary USB channel, they are still actually linked. So when I move the physical fader, it is still moving the fader on that channel. Now, obviously, it's going to be relative, so it is still going to be a lower volume. And actually, what will happen is if I move this fader all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that now effectively, because we've got that sort of gap between them, although the fader here is not quite at the bottom, on here, it is actually already 0. So effectively, the audio going to the USB secondary channel here is 0. And as I move this fader down, it's basically just going to close this gap up now until this one goes down to 0 as well. Conversely, if I was to put the relative fader position above where it is in reality on the physical fader, you would have the opposite effect. So as I move this up to the top, you can see that this one is now maxed out up here, but the physical fader is not. And then it's basically just going to close that gap up. So it's just going to be something to be aware of. I can see that there's going to be plenty of room here for people to maybe get a little bit confused, or maybe have, you've got to remember basically where these relative settings are. It's going to be easy to come in here and make some changes. And then there's no sort of way to visibly see these when we come out of these settings. So just looking at the fader now, there's no way here to see what the relative levels are on the other channel. So you will need to be aware of this. Oh, sorry, you can't see the full area of the screen that I'm referring to. Let me come back out of there. Sorry about that, Dragon. There we go. I'll put the full view on. Hopefully, let me know if you can still see the display. Okay. But yeah, that does show the full amount. I was trying to just zoom in on the screen really, but hope that does help. But let me know if you still can't see the sort of screen clearly. Hey, Keely, just saw you pop in there as well. Let me come back to that screen. So yeah, there's basically no way from looking at the screen now when you're on the main screen to know what these relative levels are. So you will need to be sort of conscious about what you've set those at to know that now that I'm moving the fader up and down, what that's doing to those other channels. So in this case, we were on that USB 2 channel. We've set that to be at a different level to here. So you will need to be conscious about this and what you are doing. Yeah, Bicky's saying he hopes they update the display to show that. Yeah, it's going to be tricky though, isn't it? I mean, I've been wondering about that, like how they could do it, because maybe have an indicator on it to know when that, just to tell you that there is at least one channel where it's different. Otherwise, yeah, it could get quite complicated. I don't know how they would do that from a UI point of view to actually show that you've got differing levels. It might be useful where if they had something where it basically showed like what is the maximum difference in either direction, because you could have we've got basically not 10 channels, is it, that we can change? 10 channels effectively. So if we look at here, look, we've got 10 different channels. So there's basically, you could effectively have 10 different levels for each fader. But what they could do potentially though, is just have like a sort of max minimum. So you basically have the fader position, but then it does show you where there is a sort of maximum and where there is a minimum sort of above and below that. That might be one solution to sort of illustrate that, because as I say, you are going to have to keep this in your mind otherwise. But yeah, showing all 10 is probably going to be a bit of a stretch. But if I come back into here, so this that we've been talking about so far is this relative change. So it's basically relative to the fader. And as I move the actual fader, it is moving the one that we've adjusted as well. What you can also do, though, is you can actually unlink them. So clicking on this little link here, what that's going to do is, in fact, let me do this one. I'll do this one. So now they are unlinked. So hopefully you can see there's the link symbol there looks to be sort of broken. And now what happens is the fader, when I move this fader up and down, you can see on the screen that the fader position, the light, the light one here, the small little indicator, is showing the position moving up and down of this fader, but actually the fader going out onto this specific channel on this custom routing is not changing at all. So that is now no longer linked to this fader here. So then in that case, this is just a case of tap on this, we can adjust the level of that one, we can put it exactly where we want it, we could have it just all the way down, we could have it wherever we want it, and it's not going to be affected by this one. So that is where you just want to set a specific level for that specific channel. And of course, as you can see, we can do this for all of the different inputs. Now we can also do that across all of the different channels. So you can effectively, in theory, then just set completely independent levels across all of the channels as well. So that is the one that is a sort of unlinked. Now, what you can also do is basically replicate the previous functionality that we had, which is to say, you know what, in this particular mix, I just don't want to include that at all. So you would click on here, and now it is not going out to that particular channel. Incidentally, mix minus, so just to be clear on this, you've got the option of main or mix minus. When you come into custom, there's no sort of mix minus setup by default. But if you want mix minus, then the way to do that is basically just remove the actual channel that is, the outward output to that channel from this input. So here we're on USB 2. So mix minus is effectively, you've got all of the channels going to USB 2 except USB 2. So if you wanted to make sure that you were adjusting levels, but you also want this mix minus thing, you just need to make sure that you sort of remove the corresponding channel from the mix that is going back down that channel. So here we're looking at USB 2. So we remove USB 2, and that is now effectively mix minus, but we've made some adjustments to the levels as well. So that is how mix minus effectively works. Now, one of the questions that a lot of people ask, and I've had this with consultations where people are not comfortable with hearing themselves back over their over their monitors. You know, if they're on Zoom calls or things like that all day, they find it a distraction to be hearing themselves back. Now, obviously, the reason why we have the monitor, if you're on mic 1 position and you're plugged into your headphone 1, then you're going to hear the microphone, you're going to hear yourself back. And some people find that strange. They're not used to it, or they just don't like it. Well, up until now, there's been no way to actually prevent that, because it's part of the the thing that, as the sort of host, if you like, the person on channel 1, that you're going to want to be able to monitor everything, including your microphone. And there was no way to actually change that. Well, now effectively you can. So if you're someone who doesn't like to hear yourself back, then what you can do is you can come into the headphones, because as well as being able to change these USB channels, we can also change the headphones as well. So if I come into the headphones 1, which is the sort of main one, then you can see that I've got my my little microphone here as I'm talking. The levels are going up and down, and everything else is just exactly as it is. So these are all, there's no adjustments being made. They're all just doing exactly what the sort of main board, if you like, is showing. But what I could do is I could actually just remove my microphone from the mix. And so now I'm not hearing myself back. And for me, this is a bit weird because I'm now used to it. But a lot of people, as I say, don't want to necessarily hear themselves back when they're on, Zoom calls or things like that. So that is how you would do that. You can effectively just remove anything from any channel now. So you can effectively remove your microphone. I'm just going to put that back for a moment. So this brings us on to another sort of area that I'm going to be using this for, which is just quickly, hey, Eileen, great to see you here. One of the ways that I'm going to be using this is I've done this sort of little workaround before to give me an extra channel on the Rodecaster going into my computer, because I use basically I've got my microphone here. This one is for Ecamm Live, orange for Ecamm. This one is Discord, so purple for Discord. And then I've got my blue for Zoom. So those are my 3 channels. And those are basically the USB Rodecaster main, Rodecaster chat, and the secondary channel. So those are the 3 USB channels that we've got over those 2 USB connectors that we've got. So that is those are 3 dedicated channels that I'm using with Mix Minus on for those sort of 3 communication apps where I need to have basically a dedicated channel with Mix Minus. But what I did was I basically used then 2 of the channels on the back, or 2 of the inputs on the back. So I've got here these 2 here that are just down there. That is basically a left and right channel that is coming from the computer. And this is something that somebody asked about. I posted a short about this the other day, actually. But how do you do this where you've basically got this extra channel then coming in from your computer? And I've talked about this before on the channel, but we can now sort of build on this. But just to be clear, the way that you do that is you need something basically with a TRS on one end, and then on the other end, if you have a dual XLR, you can basically plug this into your computer, and you can plug these then into the dual XLR on the back, and that gives you a left and right channel. And to set that up on the Rodecaster, if I just come back to this shot, if you want to set up your channels, basically you're going to go to where is it? Faders. And then you can set what you want for each individual channel. So if I want to apply basically a stereo pair, but to a single fader, you just come in here and you can see here where you are going to select what the input is. In fact, if I just come and do a new one for you, whoops a daisy. Let me just take a sort of blank space like that. Here, what you can do is you can see that you can select any input to apply to that fader, but you've also got these little stereo buttons just down here. And you can see there is a stereo button between input 1 and 2, a stereo button between input 2 and 3, and a stereo between input 3 and 4. And what that's going to do is that's basically going to link those 2 mono channels into a single stereo channel. And so that's effectively what I've got here. So you can see it says on it 2 and 3. So that channel there is basically linking input 2 and 3, and that's the ones that I've got there on the back, linking together these 2 channels to become a stereo pair. And that you would do, I'm actually using a slightly different connector there, but this is basically the easiest one that you would have, which, as I say, is 2 XLRs going into a TRS, and plug that into your headphone socket on the back of your computer. And then basically you've got another feed coming into the Rodecaster from your computer. So the way that I had this set up was that I was, as I say, using these 3 USB channels with Mix Minus for Zoom, Ecamm, and Discord. And then I had my system audio, which didn't really need to be 2-way in any case. I had that coming into this this sort of pair on the back. And by the way, I've left a link to all of these connectors down in the back in the description. But now what they've done is, with opening up the routing to the headphones, what we can effectively do is we can actually create a 2-way audio and basically create another Mix Minus channel. So the way that you would do that is basically take a cable out of the back. So I've got this cable into here. In fact, let me just show you what I'm talking about. Move it out of the way a little bit. Where's it gone? So basically you would take a cable out of the headphone socket at the back, and then you would route this one then into the computer, and you'd use something like this. If I just bring it up, so that's just an extension cable, a 3.5 mil extension, and then that would go into something like this, where you've got a headphones and a mic that goes into a TRRS, because the TRRS going into the computer, into the back of the Mac Mini, for example, will basically give you the mic input and the headphone input, or headphone output, I should say. So then the headphones here, you're going to connect this using this cable, the one that goes to the dual input into the Rodecaster. So the headphone socket from your Mac is now basically going into the Rodecaster. And then that output, you would need to get a little adapter like this, to take the 1/4 inch down to a 3.5 mil, run that into the mic input here that we've got, the little microphone symbol there, and then plug both of these into your Mac. And now you've basically got a mic input and a speaker output from your Mac. So then what you can do is basically just then that is coming out of, as I say, one of the headphone ports on the back. So if I come over to here for a second. So that then is just plugged into one of these headphone ports. So this is plugged into headphone socket number 2. And that then is controlled by this dial here. So what we can do then is, if we come back into our audio routing, So I'm going to go into the outputs, go into routing. And now what we can do is set up our headphone 2, which is effectively our feed back to our computer on that channel. And now if you want to have mix minus, as I mentioned before, the way to do that is just to remove the thing from that channel that you want to remove. Now in this case, it is actually this stereo pair that is coming in. So that is effectively the input from our computer. And what we're going to do is we're just going to remove that one from the output that is going back out through the headphone 2 socket, which is actually the input to the computer. And now what we've created is basically a fourth mix minus channel. And so any application on your computer that you wanted to use in addition to the other 3, where you wanted to have mix minus on, then you would just select the input and the output as being your headset. So in your Mac, you would see in your settings that you've got an option to change your audio, and you could just change that to be the headset that you've got plugged in at the back. And that would effectively then be this fourth mix minus channel. So plenty of reasons where you might want to use that. So if you are someone who uses Zoom and also Zoom ISO, for example, then you would use the Zoom ISO would be on one of these channels and the Zoom would be on another, and then you would still have your Ecamm and Discord as well. So that is a great way to just sort of hack this around to basically give yourself a fourth USB, a fourth mix minus channel. Now somebody asked about, can you just plug directly into a single socket on the back? Just taking an extension, plug it into the computer and into a single socket rather than rather than use 2 of them. That's what I did initially until my error was pointed out by, I think it was DJ Rob who pointed it out, as well as a couple of others in the comments. But yeah, the sockets on the back, just bear in mind, are only mono. So you do need that pair if you want to have the stereo. But if mono's cool with you, then you can just plug it into one of those. And then in that case, you're only taking one channel. And it might be that with your microphone, you can actually have up to 3 different mix minus channels then, in addition to the 3 that we've got over USB. The only thing then would be how to get them into your computer. So if you want to create extra channels, another way to do it would be to then have one of them going in over that TRS cable into your computer as showing up as the headset. You could also get you can get these little USB adapters that basically you plug your headphones and your mic in, and that would give you another channel that way. So there's lots of ways that you can basically still add these all in. I'm not sure, if you're getting up to maybe 6 mix minus channels, you're probably doing something a little bit niche anyway. But there you go. Just a quick check-in. Hey, Parker, great to see you here. Bicky, so you're going to use that with when you stream on Discord, play music low for listeners, but it's too loud in my headphones. That's exactly the use case for this. So yeah, it's good that it's finally here. I'll be interested to see how they do display this on the screen. I'm also really looking forward to being able to do this with the smart pads. I'll come on to that in a moment, but it's limited in terms of what you can sort of activate of this, but I still tend to use the sort of listen buttons at the bottom and the mute buttons to activate the sort of exclusions out to certain channels. I'll explain this in more depth, but being able to do it with a touch of a button, I think, would be a really useful feature as well. Hey, James, great to see you here. Confidently upgrade to Ventura. Yeah, I'm on Ventura now, so. In terms of Ventura, there's a few little niggles with it in terms of some of the things that you've got set up. You have to reapply the preferences. So, for example, with Pro Mouse, that wasn't working. I had to go back in and go and refresh the settings or something like that. So, there's certain things that you might have to reset, but it seems to be working fine. So Bicky's asking, can you change monitoring volume for individual channel? You can't change the monitoring volume as such, except that you are monitoring it in your headphones. So in theory, yes, because you would basically, monitoring is basically just what is coming through your headphones, isn't it? So in that sense, it would just be a case of coming into the headphone channel. So if I go into the headphone 1, so that's where you're going to be monitoring, and basically you've got control over all the levels there, so you could actually change the monitoring level relative or independently. And so in that sense, yes, you could do that. You could change exactly what you're hearing because you're just on the headphones. Hey Andrew, great to see you here as well. Hello there. Great to see you. First time in the live stream. I appreciate your comments. You're at the beta, and I sent feedback to Rode to suggestions to add markers or indicators on the main screen to see the relative levels of each. I'll be doing exactly the same. Yeah, I don't know if you were here earlier, but we were just talking about that as well. It would be really useful to see that. So that's a great suggestion. And yeah, we've all got to get that one in. the more of us who submit it, the better. You could, oh dear, that's terrible. You can never hear your vocal effects and did a whole stream talking in megaphone and never knew it. I've done that before, like triggered something without realizing it. It's funny that is, because I've heard a few people have had that, and it doesn't happen with me all of the time, but there's been a couple of occasions where I've had it where I've been trying to trigger something and I've thought it hasn't worked, but it has. So yeah, there's definitely a few sort of software firmware issues with it in terms of that. The other one that I've had that I know a lot of people have had as well is I'll get like one of the smart pads triggering just on its own, and it seemed to happen as soon as I mounted it on a stand, and it was worse when it was mounted onto my Elgato Wave arm. So just to show you how my setup is at the moment. That's perhaps a bit far away. Try this one. So this is just on an arm at the moment because it's got the Visa mount on the back. So I've mounted it to that, and so it means I can sort of move it out of the way when I'm not demoing it. I can push it out of the way. But I also did have it on this Elgato Wave arm because you can obviously also have it with a single connector on the back as well. Whatever the size is. So they got either the single screw or the 4 screws. So at the moment it's with the 4 screws on it. But when it was just on this one, I don't know whether it was kind of like twisting and distorting the casing or something like that potentially, but yeah, basically this smart pad here triggered. So I've basically just decided I'm not going to use this one just for for the sake of security. But that sound pad just happened to be the sound of crickets, so it's not great when you're on a Zoom meeting and then suddenly you get crickets. But I suppose it's better than, as you say, the the megaphone or the robot voice. Mr. Camera Junkie, I don't know if you're aware of him, but he's got a great channel and he posted a short recently where, yeah, he was just at a crucial point of explaining something and it went into the whole, witness protection style voice, the deep one. So that was quite amusing. But yeah, obviously not for a whole stream. So definitely a few little issues around. Do you know if Rode is planning on dragging and dropping the touchpads? Oh, that is so needed, isn't it? It seems such a strange thing to not be in there, to be honest, given that you can program the touchpads on the screen, and given that the screen, you can drag and drop the channels on the faders. Why is it that we can't do that? Because it makes actually I find there's a huge amount of friction in using the smart pads, and so I probably don't use them as much as I want, or as much as I would if it was just a lot easier to use. So just in case you weren't aware, what Andrew's talking about there is on the smart pads. You've got these different smart pads. So if I tap on a space here and add, let's say I don't know, I'll put an effect. I'll just put the robot on. So now we've got, it would help if I showed you this, wouldn't it? Let me come back and do that again. There we go. So what we're talking about here is where you've got the smart pads and you can program them. So you can program the smart pads by just going in, either tapping on here. You can go into do it from the menus, but just tap anywhere on this area of the screen, which sort of shows you what these 8 smart pads are doing. So if I come in here and just say apply an effect, so we'll apply robot to that one. And then if we come into this one, we're going to program the one next to it. Let's say that is some other effect. I don't know, something like that, echo. So now we've got those 2 smart pads. Well, how do you swap those around? Let's say I want to decide I want to move that one down here. You would think you'd just be able to just sort of basically touch on that and just drag it down, because you can do that. You can drag and drop, with the fader positions. So it's still a physical thing on the device, and you can just drag and drop and switch around which one you want where. But with these, you can't. And what it means is, if I want the, whatever this effect is down here, what I actually have to do is click in here. Then I have to clear it like that, and then I have to come down here, and then I have to set it up again. And with a simple effect like this, it's obviously no problem. But when you've got an audio clip, you've got to go back into the Rode Central device, Rode Central app, and then you've got to go through and set it all up again. So yeah, having drag and drop on there, it's something that I've submitted already as a feature request, but it definitely is something that I'm hoping comes in, because it will just make it it will just make it a lot more sort of user friendly. What kind of boom arm am I using for the Rodecaster? I'll tell you which one it is, and I'll get this up because I should have put that in the description, but I haven't. But I can get it up, no problem. It was like $24 or something like that, not an expensive one. And I thought to myself, is this really going to be any good? I bought it was whatever the equivalent is in Thailand, but on Amazon it is about $24, I think. I'll find the link for you though, because yeah, it was one of these things where I wasn't really sure about it. Anyway, it turned up, and I couldn't believe actually the quality of it. It's really really sturdy, perfect for this. I've since bought another couple, so I've got one with my. If I just come to this shot. One's holding this, but then this monitor here. So I have a monitor that is basically beneath my teleprompter. It's like a little lightweight monitor. And so I've got one for that. And then I bought one for my wife's monitor as well. So they're really, really, really good. Let me just find the link for it for you, though. Just a second. That's it. Get this up for you. Yeah, it's not a brand I've heard of, obviously, at that price, but there you go. So this is called a North Bayou. It is one of the Amazon Choice ones. I didn't realize that when I bought it because I bought it from Lazada, which is the sort of Southeast Asia Amazon equivalent. But there it is. So at the moment it's $29 on Amazon, and yeah, it's just it feels so sturdy. I would have thought it would be you know, a lot more flimsy than it is, considering the price point. But yeah, I've been really happy with this. There it is. And it comes with a just to digress slightly, but since we're talking about it, you can see it's got this basically a clamp, so it clamps to your desk, but it does also come with the screw attachment, so you can actually just screw it directly through your desk instead. So I haven't done that here, but I've done that on my wife's desk, so it just sort of neatens it up. Holds a lot of weight. I mean, I've just using it for the Rodecaster, obviously. I'm also using it for this really lightweight monitor, but my wife's monitor is like a, 32-inch curved monitor, and it's got no problem holding that up as well. Got some cable management going on underneath there as well. And yeah, it's really good. Rotates as well, so you can twist it around. So all the usual things. But yeah, I was just really impressed with that for the price. I thought it was really, really cool. So anyway, I digress slightly. Where were we? Yeah, so I do hope that they do some other updates in terms of that sort of dragging and dropping as well. Now I did get a couple of other questions though about the software and the update, but one of them was related to the software. The Rode Central software. In fact, there was one thing that I missed out of there. Let me come to that as well as I go off topic again. Where is it? Not there. It is this one. Hopefully. Yeah, there we go. So that is the Rode Central app. So accompanying the update to the device, there is also a Rode Central update. And you can see this is beta 2.0.15. You do need to get that as well as the firmware. So make sure that you download that, because that will have an effect on working with the beta. Now, I mentioned before, there's a couple of things that have changed in here. First of all, if I go into the audio setup, we've now got more control over what we can do in terms of, I've just noticing this is not actually picking up my channels at the moment. Maybe I need to restart the software. I can still demo this anyway. So, but basically here, we've now got, as well as being able to set up the routing, and this clearly is not making the connection because it should just show the routing that I've got on here. But now we've got these little cogwheels here, where basically you can go in and actually change all of the processing and things like that. That is something that wasn't available on the previous version of the software. So now you can actually go in and change all of the, the noise gate, the compression, and all of that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, that is another little addition which has been added in. We've also then got the new routing. So obviously you can control all of that from here. So that is in the, where was that? Device configuration, routing. So all of the features that we've just looked at in terms of setting those different levels, then yeah, you can do that in here now as well. You could do that before as well, but it's just, we obviously didn't have all of the features, so that's been added in. One thing that they've also added, though, is talking about the smart pads. They have actually added in the ability to change things like the effects and the mixer effects. So previously, it was only the the sound settings basically, so to be able to upload a particular sound to that pad. Whereas now you can go in and change all of the effects as well. So previously we just had this. Choose a file, drag and drop, so it was just for the audio. But now you can go in and change all of those effects as well. So that's just another update to the settings another way that you can update the settings, I should say, from the app. Hey Felicia, great to see you here as well. Whoops, Daisy, where's it gone? I'm a bit trigger happy there. Took it off the screen as soon as it went up. There we go. Hey Felicia. Yes, struggling. Ordering from Amazon US to be shipped to Europe is probably not the wisest, but you should still be able to find it from there. They just search for the name. I think they've got them everywhere. Like I say, I got it from in my case Lazada Thailand. So yeah, they are available everywhere else as well. So the other thing then that I was showed on my it was actually inadvertently in the short that somebody asked about as well, was this little thing that I've got on top of my there we go, this thing here. So this is I talked about this actually in my previous live stream. I was talking about my studio upgrades. Hey Richard, great to see you as well. So one of the things that I'm going to be starting to do more with the Rodecaster in my studio in general is actually doing some demos of products. So obviously for not for YouTube so much, but on the on my Amazon Live channel, doing product demos and things like that, where a microphone like this gets in the way. So I wanted a wireless solution, and the one that I went with after a lot of research was this one, this small rig. What's it? Small rig W60. How do you pronounce that? Pluravala. There we go. One thing I really love about this, though, is the fact that it does come in its own little charging case. So I looked at the Rode, obviously, the Rode Wireless Go, and then there's the DJI option as well. But I just like the fact that these come in their own little case, and then they've got the two wireless devices in there. It doesn't record to the device like the Rode does, but nevertheless, it's two wireless ones there. They've got a little windshield, obviously, that goes on the top. And then the thing I like about this is you've got a USB charging socket on the side, but also it has just got a USB cable built into the case, which is a nice little touch. So, great if you're sort of traveling to be able to take that with you as well. I'm going to primarily be using this just in the studio. And so as well as the two mics, which I'll be using one of at any given time, you can see one of them's just switched on there. Switch that off. And yeah, they're a bit smaller than the Rode, by the way, as well. So the Rode Wireless Goes are basically the same depth, but just not quite a bit wider. So these are not quite as wide as that. But the transmitter, these are the transmitters. The receiver, though, is basically just sitting up here. And the way that I've done that is because I did want it to be sort of sitting where I can see it. I can show you how I've set this up. I'm a bit of a MacGyver fan, so I tend to make these little things. So what I've done is I've basically got a little stand like that. This is the Rode VXLR Pro. So this is basically to take a 3.5mm jack and take that into XLR. There are three different versions of this. This is actually the middle one. One of them doesn't do phantom power. The one that is the next one up from this, the top one, if you like, the more expensive one, that basically it will work over much longer distances. So it's something to do with the power rating or something like that, but it will work basically if you've got a longer cable attached. As I'm just using this here, I do want the phantom power, but I don't necessarily need it to go over long distances. So I've got this, so it just plugs into there. The actual transmitter itself, or the receiver, I should say, it just looks like this, the cutest little transmitter, receiver, I should say, if I switch that on. It's just got a little screen there, and then you can adjust the levels of each mic individually. So with these little dials, they're not switched on, so it's not showing up, but that would show you sort of the levels coming in from the mic. That then just is plugged in with this little cable that comes with actually with the set. It's the same one as you can get with most Rode in any case. With Rode mics, it's the TRS cable here at one end, going into TRS on the other, so that is just plugged into there. This is a little cold shoe mount, so I've left a link to all of these things, by the way, in the description as well. But then I've just used my little magic molded plastic. So this is this stuff called Polymorph. I've talked about this on the channel before. This is not a bag of Colombia's finest. It's something called Polymorph. which is basically little plastic granules. And maybe I can show you this. It comes in a packet of these little plastic beads, and you basically just put it into warm water or hot water, and then they melt, and then mold it into any shape, and then when it cools down, it'll set, as hard plastic, basically. So that effectively is what this thing is. So I've just made this little molded plastic that sits nicely over the top of the Rode. So this comes with a belt clip, by the way. So if you've got, an XLR cable, clips on your belt, and then you'll just plug it into there. But this then will just basically fit onto this. So it just gives me the little angle there of this cold shoe mount. And then this will just slot into that. And then this pops into the back. So there I have a little thing that will basically just plug into the back of my my Rodecaster, and it's got my little Wi-Fi receiver, or whatever it is. Just plug it in. And that is just nicely mounted onto the back of my my Rodecaster. So someone had asked about that. That is what that is. It is a receiver for my wireless mics, and then I just wanted it like that so that it sits nicely on top of my Rodecaster. So when I'm looking at it, that's what I see. I can see the levels that it's coming in at, and it just sits neatly up there. But that plastic stuff, there was one that I was on, or rather had. Luis from Mr. Camera Junkie himself was on my podcast, and he was talking about this other stuff that is like it comes in a sheet basically, but it's like toughened plastic that you do the same sort of thing, heat it up, and you can mold it into anything. So yeah, I need to get some of that one as well. But there is a 3D printer in my future, yes. It's one of those things that's been on the list, but I've never got around to it. But yeah, there's lots of things that I could 3D print. This stuff's really handy though, just for making, you don't have to do any, designing of the things. You can just make little fittings and things like that. I've used this so many times. It comes in really handy for little repairs as well, of stuff where you need to just repair something. It's, it works a treat. It's really tough once it's set as well. So yeah, definitely recommend that. Hey, Jules, great to see you. Thank you for dropping into the stream. How does one set this up for a multi-track recording with Logic Pro? Can you briefly show that? Right, I can't necessarily show that because I don't have Logic Pro on here at the moment, or anything that would have multi-track. I can show you the settings in the Rodecaster. How about that? That is what I can do with that at the moment. So if I come back to this shot. So in the settings, and then where would it be? It would be in outputs. You've got multi-track here. So you've got two options, which is recording and USB. So recording is when you are recording to the Rodecaster itself, and USB is what is going out over the USB 1 channel. So when you are doing multi-track, you've got 3 USB channels. There's USB Rodecaster Pro 2 main, Rodecaster Pro 2 chat, and Rodecaster Pro 2 secondary. However, you can only use the multi-track on the primary channel, the USB 2, the Rodecaster Pro 2 main. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful. On the main channel. So in here, you've got the option of it being off, pre-fader, or post-fader. So with it being off, then that means it's just going to go out as a stereo mix. And in fact, you can see that when you actually have a look at your devices. Maybe I can get this up. If I go to my audio preferences, I'll just show you the difference of how you can tell that this is either on or not. Sound settings. So what we'll see is, if I bring this one up over here for you. So I've got my sound settings open now. It's coming down. And what you can see is over here where you've got your list of input and output devices, this says Rodecaster Pro 2 main stereo. And that's because I've got it set up as there's no multi-track on it. If you've got multi-track on, then you'll see that this name of this will change to Rodecaster Pro 2 main multi-track. And so that is the one in your audio application. That is the one that you will need to select. So you'd need to make sure you've got multi-track on the device, but then also make sure that you've got just selected this one as your sort of input to your, your audio program. In terms of the different types of multi-track, there's basically two options there. So you've either got, if I come to the right scene, there we go. You can see you've got here, hopefully you can read that, either either off, pre-fader, or post-fader. So pre-fader is likely what you'll want to have if you are doing any sort of audio mixing in, an app like you're talking about there, like in Logic, because pre-fader is basically going to send all of the sort of raw information exactly as it's coming in. So you're not going to be applying any sort of adjustment to that in terms of these faders. So that would be pre-fader. So if you're going to do any sort of post mixing, that is likely what you'll want. Post-fader then is, any adjustments that you've made here are going to also carry through into that mix. So likely if you're going to be doing things in, any kind of audio editing app, you likely want to have the actual, full signal coming in, and then you can do the adjustments in there. So yes, I would say that that's probably what you're going to want. And then in that particular app, as I say, they're not apps that I use, but in there you would then have all of those tracks coming in. Oh, that's interesting. So, Bicky, when you uploaded large audio files to the pads, it gave you less pages. Did it really? Oh, that's interesting. I've never tried that. So perhaps there's a limit on the space of how much it's got for that. Interesting stuff. Yeah, never realised that one. That's good to know, though. That is. As I say, I've not really used the pads that much, just purely because of the friction involved in making any changes to them, so I don't tend to use them so much. Let's have a look here. GarageBand is similar. While using OBS with the Rodecaster, which setting is best to use, Rodecaster Chat or Main? It actually doesn't really matter, to be honest. Since they added in the mix minus to all of the channels, what I would say, though, is to have a dedicated channel to OBS and then also have mix minus turned on. And the reason is that if you've got any audio coming from OBS, it's been a while since I've tried playing around with OBS, but obviously you can have audio embedded, in your OBS setup, for example. So OBS is going to see the Rodecaster as a mic input. So if you've got any audio that is happening in OBS, it's going to be feeding into the Rodecaster, into the mix, and then it will be feeding straight back into OBS if you don't have mix minus switched on. And so that is what you'd want to do. Whichever channel you have it on, if I just come back into this top-down shot again, make sure you go into the routing, and let's say you've got it on the USB 1 or USB chat, whichever it is, just make sure that mix minus is switched on. Because the thing about that as well is, you don't actually notice it yourself as the person on the Rodecaster monitoring it, that if you don't have mix minus, it is basically feeding back into the application. So often people do this on Zoom. Everything sounds fine to them, but because they don't have mix minus on, everyone in Zoom is saying, I can hear echo, and it means slap back. They can hear themselves coming back. So yeah, in OBS, just to reiterate, I would say basically choose any channel, but try and give it its dedicated channel. So you'd have maybe system audio on one and OBS on another. That is going to be the best result in terms of future-proofing it. This thing about the mix minus, by the way, it's one of those things that if you need it, you need to have it on. But if you don't need it, it also doesn't matter if you do have it on. So I always just say you might as well just switch the mix minus on for anything, for anything you're doing really, for all of these for all of the USB channels at least. Because I can't think of a scenario where you would want the channel feeding back to itself. So it almost is a no-brainer to me to have it switched on. So in my case, I've got Ecamm Live, which is my OBS, if you like. Ecamm Live is on the main channel. I've got Discord on the chat, and I've got Zoom on the secondary channel, but they could equally be on each other's channel. The only one where the actual channel that you pick makes a difference is coming back to that previous case that Jules was asking about, which was when you're using multi-track. The multi-track only applies to the main channel. So if you are doing anything where you want to use multi-track, you probably want to reserve that channel for that, and then use the other channels for other things. So yeah, hope that answers the question. But yeah, that's where I'm up to with the Rodecaster. So a couple of things in terms of little sort of bugs that I've noticed. So one of the things that I do when I'm actually doing this, rather than exclude channels from specific incoming channels from specific outgoing channels, I tend to use the listen buttons on the bottom. So what I mean by that is, if I just come out of here, I've just mentioned that I have Ecamm on this channel, so I want that to go out in my live stream. This is actually the channel for Discord. So I've got Discord open, so channel members can go in there and join before the live stream and afterwards as well. So that's the cue to check out channel memberships. But I have that one where I want to be able to hear what's going on, but I obviously don't want it going out in the stream. If somebody speaks in Discord, I don't want that just passing straight through into the stream. I've got Zoom here as well, and this is system audio, so I don't necessarily want system audio going through all the time. I've put these faders down to the bottom at the moment just for this demo because I didn't want to have any of these things sort of cluttering up when I was showing these other advanced settings. But normally what I do is I basically have these mute buttons fixed so that these channels are now muted. So even if somebody was screaming in the Discord, it wouldn't come through there because they are muted. But also in that case, I can't hear them either. So they are muted for me and they're muted for you as well. So if you use the listen button though, so this is the green button, what that means is then that I'm listening to that channel and now I can't hear any of the other channels. I'm only listening to the Discord. It's not going out into the mix. So I can't now hear myself, for example, even though that's going up and down, I can't hear myself. But you can listen to multiple channels. So actually what I tend to do is just set this so that I'm listening to all of the channels, but I'm muting the ones that are going out. The reason why I do it like that is because in the live stream, sometimes I may want to flick over to Discord and have the audio from Discord come through. And so this is, for me, the quickest way for me to be able to just basically toggle this on and off. And then that would then be going out into the mix. I can toggle it off again. And then now it's not going out into the mix, but I can still hear it. So this allows me to monitor and listen to what's going on without it going into the mix. And as I say, I wouldn't want to do that in here, going through the custom routing, because it would mean anytime I wanted to bring a guest up from Discord, for example, into a live stream, or if I was doing something in Zoom where I wanted to have someone in Discord coming into the Zoom call, which is something I do sometimes, then yeah, it would be a bit of a pain to actually go in here, click on the outputs, click in the routing, click in the output here and make these adjustments. So that's the reason why, for me, I find that these listen and mute buttons down here work really well. One thing that I've noticed though is that whereas before, even though you're not listening, before the levels would still come through. So if I was to play some audio or something like that, I would still see the levels going up and down. In fact, if I just come into something here, maybe I can just get up a something with audio in that's not going to cause issues. It's probably easiest if I just go to play one of my own videos, and then I'm sure it's not. So I'll just play something in system audio for you for a second, just so that we can see how this is sounding. Second. Because what was happening before is I would still see the audio levels going up and down. So if I just play any video from here, I'm just playing a video on here, and I can now hear the audio. Backstage podcast. What's the daisy? Now that is coming through for some reason, because I'll tell you why that is. I've changed the setup of this a little bit. But basically what I'm getting at is where before I was listening to something, if I just quickly change my audio settings, I change the output. There we go. I want that to be external headphones. Right. So now I'm hearing the system audio coming through on this channel, because if you remember, that pair there is the one that I have for my my system audio. Now, previously, even if the thing was muted and I was listening, I would still see the level though. I would still see the level of the audio. But it seems in this update, I'm no longer seeing the level, even though, as you can see, wanting or feeling you need there is some audio actually coming through there. So it's only when I unmute it for you that I actually see the level. But previously, I would still see the level, which is something that I'd think you would want. I don't know why they've removed that, because intentionally, because I think that you do want to be able to mute something, monitor it, and actually see where the levels are here. That's part of the whole point, is to be able to listen and monitor something to get the levels right before it goes through into the mainstream. So that just seemed to be one little bug that I've noticed. At least I think it's a bug. It's certainly something that doesn't make entire sense to me. So yeah, and that's how Bicky, you listen and monitor it too. And this brings me on to another sort of suggestion that I'm going to be putting in. I've already put this in, I think, with the previous beta, but I might as well try and put it in again, which is that with the smart pads, you can control, to some extent, some of this monitoring on the bottom. So if I come into the smart pads and then click on one of these, tap on one of these, we don't click anymore, do we? But you've got these mixer effects. And what this allows you to do is basically set up some level of routing. So trash talk is if you want to talk trash about people who are coming in over USB or Bluetooth, and that is between you and other people in the studio. So if you activate that one, then basically it means that only the people on the headphones and the mic inputs will be able to sort of hear each other. Assuming that you want to talk trash about people who are coming in through some other way. So that is just it just sets that up as one button, basically means that anyone on headphones in studio will be able to hear, and anybody else will not be able to hear what's being said whilst that is pressed. Then the other one is back channel. So these are the two that relate to routing. And with back channel, what you can do is, if I look on these buttons down here now, so at the moment I've got these mute symbols here next to these three channels, but I'm listening on all of them. If you actually mute and listen on the main mic channel, so the primary mic, what that's going to do is that's going to set up a back channel between the mic and any other channel that you've got these two things switched on for. So if I press this, you'll see that they all go yellow. So now those have all gone yellow. I can kind of simulate this with you guys, I guess. If I just turn these down, I'm going to now create a back channel between me and this live stream by pressing basically the mute button on both of them. And what you'll see is that, hopefully you can see that, that has gone yellow basically on these two, meaning that now basically this audio now is only going between me and you. It's not going down to these other channels. So it means that in the Discord, Jeff now won't be able to hear me. But if I take that off for a second, like this, like that. There we go. So that is the way you can set up a back channel, and you can do that in here as well. So you can decide where you want the back channel. So between my mic and my headphones and any of these other channels, but also with the USB channels. So you can do this back channeling, but what you can't do is be really specific about how you want these things set up. So what I'd love to see is for them to advance this whole section of the where was it, the mixer effects. So build out this mixer effects more to be able to activate some of these controls, so that we don't have to do this little workaround of using the listen and listen and mute commands to decide what's going where. Being able to have a shortcut basically on here to activate some of the advanced routing would be really helpful. So that's something else that I would like to see. So have you played with using the caster with using caster with RCP? Do you know, I haven't played with that actually. Find an application control between the Mac and the RCP 2. I've not played with the app, and I don't think I've heard of that app. But I'm Googling it right now. But what I have been pleased to see is that I mentioned on a stream previously, I'm going to check this out whilst we're talking. I mentioned on a previous stream how I was thinking about making an app to basically connect the Rodecaster with Ecamm Live, so that you could control audio over Ecamm Live with the MIDI controls, because you can control MIDI from the smart pads, and then you can also control things with the faders. There was already an application called ELMC, I think, Ecamm Live MIDI controller, and that enabled you to use MIDI devices to control Ecamm, so you could use MIDI to switch scenes and things like that. But one of the things it couldn't do was it couldn't adjust the volumes. So it could only do you could switch scenes and all that kind of stuff, which meant that you would be able to use ELMC to switch scenes by tapping smart pads, for example, or maybe bring up overlays by tapping the smart pad. So that would form that link. Well, two things have happened since then, since I mentioned this last time. First of all, ELMC has had a big update. So that means that now it can actually control the volume audio things like that, which means that you could then, in theory, have the Rodecaster controlling Ecamm Live audio levels. And the reason why I wanted that was specifically for controlling guest level. So in interview mode, where you've got a guest coming in, to be able to control the guest level on its own fader. You wouldn't necessarily see the actual level on here, because you're just using the fader to control something. So you're not actually seeing an audio indication of their level, except that you are seeing that on the fader coming in from Ecamm. But what it would mean is if you had multiple different guests, you could assign a fader to each guest then. So that's one thing that happened, is ELMC was updated to allow that. But the other thing that's happened is obviously the Stream Deck Plus came out, and that's now got support for that as well. So it looks like I won't be bothering to make that app after all, because I've got two new ways of solving that problem. Hey, Kath, great to see you here. I'm going to be doing some edited shorts in Descript, thanks to Kath. She did a great walkthrough of it, and basically I've been sitting on Descript for ages and not getting around to doing it and repurposing my content. And yeah, watching your live stream the other day, Kath, just basically answered all of my questions, and it saved me going and figuring it out. So I really appreciate you doing that. Something that you would love to be able to do is save audio clips sound inside the drive of the RCP, so that I wouldn't need my computer to assign them to the smart pads. Yeah, get a way to get those audio clips in. There's a sort of workaround for that, but not really. The workaround for it is you can record clips on the device itself. And so what you could do is you could have you could play the audio clip on your computer and then record it on the device. So what I'm talking about there, but yeah, I totally agree. There should be a better way to actually get those in. But the way to do that would be if we come over to here and go to the smart pads. What you can do here is click on that and click on sound, and then you can click the record button. So now anything that's coming through the Rodecaster is being recorded. So now it's recording my voice, but if I was to have any other audio coming in, it would be recording that. Click on the stop button there, and now I've got that audio clip. And if I was to play that, is being recorded. So now it's recording my voice, but if I was to have, there you go. So that is now basically got us that audio clip. And then obviously you might need to clean this up. If you play something over on your computer and you want to just sort of trim it, you can trim it like that. And you can trim the beginning and the end using those two little dots on the bottom. You can also fade it in and out by moving the dot at the top. So you can see that that's kind of like ramping up. So, and then that one's like that. Maybe ramp it down. So if I was to just click on that there, then we've got that sound assigned is being recorded. So now it's recorded. So that's basically, recording a sound on the device. So in theory, although that is obviously my voice, it could equally be anything else that's coming into the Rodecaster. So that is a little way of doing it, rather than going in and finding the file and dragging and dropping it and all that kind of stuff. You could literally just record a little clip from there instead. So that is a little way around that. But I totally agree. I think the smart pads in general are one of the areas where I see there is the most scope for improvement, where they could improve the sort of usability of it. For sure. And Paul's dropped in the link for Caster. Oh, sorry, Caster. Yeah, I have seen this, of course. This is the one that Doc was talking about. So yes, yeah. But so this one, I'm just looking. This is this one linked specifically to Rodecaster? That's what threw me, I think. Have you played with using Caster with the RCP2 to get? I get you. I thought you were talking about actually controlling apps with the Rodecaster. I've misunderstood the thing there. I haven't looked at this. Now, I know that Doc sort of dismissed the Elgato Wave software quite heavily. He says, "Oh, we don't need that. This is a better app." I would disagree with that, to be honest, because Caster is basically an app that opens up control of the Mac. Opens up control of the audio on the Mac, so you can assign basically different applications to different faders, and it basically gives you something akin to a Rodecaster in software form on your Mac. Now, I haven't really dug into this because the thing that this doesn't necessarily have is the fact that the Elgato Wave software has a link in with the Elgato Stream Deck Plus. So why would I not use the Wave software, which does pretty much the same thing as this? and I don't know, I think Doc's got a bit of a thing against Elgato because he sort of poo-poos it, for want of a better word. But yeah, this is basically like the Elgato Wave software in that you can assign different things to different channels. So I've not played around with this because I'm going to play around with the Elgato one first of all, which basically is open up free if you've got a Stream Deck Plus. So I'll be using that one a little bit more. This does kind of ostensibly the same thing. You can assign different apps to different channels, and on here you can apply effects. So all of the same kind of effects, you know, compression and stuff like that, you can apply to that as well. So yeah, they're very similar to the Elgato Wave Link software. So I shall be digging into that. Hey, Michael, great to see you here. And I've got to say, drop me an email. I've tried to reach out to you on Discord. When I was on, what's his name? DJ Strix channel, you won the Ecamm Live Masterclass. So I've still got to get that to you, and I haven't heard from him with your details. And I've sent you a message on Discord a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, just after the event. So you were one of the winners of the Ecamm Live Masterclass. So do drop me a message or tell me the best way to get that to you. And yeah, I'll get you the details for it. So then, hey, Gretchen, great to see you here as well. Appreciate you stopping by the stream. And Bicky, yeah, that went to, what was his name now? It was a chap in Canada. Jordan something. Jordan, I won't say his surname anyway, but Jordan something in Canada won the Stream Deck Plus. I am going to be doing another giveaway, though. I've not sorted out all the details of it yet, but I will be running another one. And it may well be a Rodecaster. We'll have to see. But yeah, it was... yeah, very well received that was, so I think I'll definitely do another one. So I totally missed your comment then. I was too busy telling you to make sure you drop me a message to give me your details to get you the masterclass. I completely forgot to actually read the comment. Caster's VST support, bit of audio hijack alternative. Maybe I might as well just actually show you what I'm talking about with the wavelength as well. Because Wavelink, not wavelength. Wavelink app, because yeah, it is very similar to the to Caster. Has it gone? It doesn't have, Caster has sound pads, I think, so you've got the ability to sort of trigger audio from there, which Wavelink doesn't, I don't believe. But then, you know, the whole point of that is it works with the Stream Deck anyway. So I'll just quickly show you this one since we are talking about it. So yeah, this is something I've not had time to dig into just yet. But the Wavelink software basically looks something like this. And this is what I'd mentioned on a previous stream that, yeah, this is going to actually work well with the Rodecaster to give finer control over certain different things. That one probably shouldn't be there. Let me change that to a different app. So this will just be app that is open, let's say Safari. There we go. So what this means is that basically, and this is the Wavelink app, and this previously was only available if you'd got a Elgato Wave microphone or the Elgato Wave XLR. What's it called? Wave XLR, is it? The one that you can plug any XLR mic into. So it would only work if you had got one of those devices. Well, with the Stream Deck Plus, it basically opened up the Elgato Wave software to anyone who's using a Stream Deck Plus, regardless of, you know, irrespective of whatever microphone you're using. So what that means is that you can set up this mixer. I could add another channel in here for, I don't know, something else, let's say Google Chrome. So now you can see I've got basically different channels for all of these different apps. And so that basically means that whilst on the Rodecaster, I've got now 3 USB channels for Zoom, Ecamm, and Discord. Well, what I could do is use that system audio channel that I mentioned at the beginning of the stream that I'd set up. I could then have fine control over all of the levels of all of the other different things that are feeding into that separately. And what you can also do in here is you can apply effects. So if I click on this, you've got various different audio effects that are all of the sort of built-in effects that you've got on the Mac. So we can do things like, you know, EQ, but low pass filter, high pass filter, all that kind of stuff, and apply those different effects, compression. So if I add that in there, I can come in and sort of change the effects of them. Where's it gone? It will open up in a little window somewhere. It's opening up somewhere else. Let me try that again. Add a different one. Let me just add this. It's probably, I tell you where it is. It's probably opening up behind my Ecamm window. Now, where is that opening up? I don't know. It's opening up somewhere else. So, but yeah, so basically, when you've got the Stream Deck Plus, regardless of microphone, you now have the access to this, and yeah, you can do some various different things on here and change effects and so on. And Michael's saying that he likes Wavelink when on the road or garden Zoom meetings. Oh, they sound nice, garden Zoom meetings. So yeah, but yeah, it basically just works like that. Caster is also a loopback replacement. I see. So you can do some other sort of routing stuff with that as well. But yeah, there's Caster and what is it? There's another one, isn't there? Ground control room. So if I come over to Caster, this one. Yeah, there's so there's two applications. There's ground control Caster, which is with all the different sort of. Oh, I'm not sharing the right screen here, am I? Let me try that again. There we go. There's Caster, which is this one, which is, as I say, it's very similar to that Wavelink. But there's another thing here, ground control room, and that one then has various different routing and things like that, I think. So yeah. But anyway, yes. So I'm going to be trying to. There's the sort of routing that you can do there. So yeah, with them, I've not really used loopback since I've had the Rodecaster, because I find I can do most of the routing with that, and then it's really system audio that I'm doing with anything on else on the computer. So yeah, I'll be digging into to Wavelink a little bit more. So Dragon is saying, where's it gone? Seems to be suddenly going having a little bit of a wobble for some reason. Let me get that up. Where's it gone? I've been using Loopback and Audio Hijack now, mostly Sound Source, all by Rogue Amiga. Sound Source is great for controlling the audio levels and routings. Yeah, so I used mainly Loopback and Audio Hijack. I don't think I've used Sound Source actually, but yeah, Loopback for audio routing and Audio Hijack I used to use for what's it called? Noise cancellation, getting rid of the aircon noise and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't need to do that with the Rodecaster. It is a shame, isn't it? Really, I don't know why they don't do that. Thinking about it, Vicky, really, they're saying that the Elgato Wave software, if they made that available without having to buy a specific item, because you would think that actually by opening that up to people so that people got to start using it, it would work the opposite way of actually helping incentivize people to get the device, saying that you need to have the device to use that. Well, it could work the other way. If they actually open up that software and then people saw how good it was, then they could say, well, maybe I might want to get the Stream Deck Plus now to control it, because they get to try it beforehand. So yeah, it is a bit strange, that one. Would Caster work with Rodecaster and OBS for Zoom calls in a live stream? It totally would, because basically what this is doing, so what Caster's doing and what the Wavelink software are doing, is they're basically just allowing you to control the various different levels of your audio. So in effect, as well as in just the same way as we've got the sort of, the mixer on the Rodecaster where we can adjust the levels of different channels, well, basically it's just adding another level of fine grain adjustment then, so that you can adjust the levels of different apps. And I mean, even without the Rodecaster, let's take the Rodecaster completely out of the equation, just having one of those, either Caster, the app, or having Rode, the Wavelink app, having that, you would be able to adjust levels and do very similar things as we can do with the Rodecaster. So think of it really as just an extension of the Rodecaster mixing board, really, except it all just comes down to one channel in the Rodecaster. So yeah, that's what I'd say about that. The other one that's a bit weird, whilst we're talking about Rode, is they obviously came out with a very similar app to those called Rode X, and I was really looking forward to that, because I thought it was going to be basically like a Caster or a Wavelink, but from Rode. The only thing is it's only PC, and so obviously I'm a Mac user. I was surprised that it didn't come out for Mac as well, and it basically looks very similar. In fact, if I just pull that one up, what's it called? Rode. I think it's just called Rode X, isn't it? They had a big build up to it. This new thing's coming out, Rode X, and then it was a microphone as well. A Rode X microphone, but they also had the app. Where is it? A virtual mixing solution for streaming and gaming. And yeah, this is what it was. There we are. Rode X. Unify. And as you can see from this little image here, it sits on the computer, looks very similar. So you got different levels, a bit like a I mean, it looks like a virtual Rodecaster, doesn't it? Really, you got the different faders there, you got the different channels, and yeah, it's just not available for the Mac. So I was really surprised by that. And there it is, download for PC. Unify is compatible with Windows PCs only, Windows 10 and above required. So the day that it was released, I went to go and download it. I was like, oh, never mind. But yeah, that's a bit surprising. Hopefully that will come to the Mac at some point. Well, I think I've pretty much covered everything. Yeah, Dragon Ground control room does look pretty cool. I will dig into that at some point. It's on my list. I've got to get around to it. Thanks for stopping by. Great to see you again in here. And yeah, hope to catch up again soon. So that is about it in terms of the Rodecaster. And we've digressed a little bit. If anyone's got any final questions or anything like that related to the Rodecaster, do let me know. Otherwise, what I'll do is I shall more Rodecaster content, obviously, coming imminently. I've got a few other little videos that are planned as well. I should also just mention that if you are interested in learning more about the Rodecaster Pro 2, then you may want to check out the Rodecaster Pro 2 Masterclass, which is available on my website, and I should probably just pull that up. That basically covers everything from beginner through to advanced level of the Rodecaster, and goes into detail about like advanced audio processing and stuff like that. So over 100 videos in there. This at the moment is obviously beta software that we're looking at, or beta firmware. As soon as it makes it into the final, you know, a real firmware update, if you like, what do they call it? You know, a final update, then the content in the Rodecaster Pro 2 Masterclass will be updated as well, because it does stay up to date with all the latest firmware and that. The one that I think is the biggest sort of use of this course, and the reason why I created it, is I see so many people who don't really understand the audio processing side of things, and so I do have a whole section there which is on advanced audio processing, where I go into things like, you know, what is compression and noise gates, and what do all of those different parameters mean. So when you go into the advanced section of the audio processing, you know, you'll see things like attack, delay, and all of those. I think a lot of people that are maybe just, you know, new to Rodecasters, new to audio, they don't necessarily know what those things mean, and so are not sure how to tweak those to get the best results. And it seems like, you know, this is such a powerful device, to not understand how to use some of these advanced features is something that I think potentially, you know, is an area where people would like to learn more, and certainly that's my motivation for sort of creating this course. So you can find that out at rodecastermasterclass.com and find more details about it there. And yeah, that is just something if you're interested in learning more about Rodecaster. I mentioned this in my previous video, and somebody got a little bit upset that I put an advert for one of my own products in my own video. How shocking is that? But YouTube is, after all, a platform built on advertising, and so I just choose to advertise some of my own products from time to time. But hopefully you get value from all of the free videos on my channel as well. But I left it till right to the end today. Thank you to everybody for stopping by, and great to catch you all here. Much appreciated. Thanks, Bicky. Thanks, Steve. Great to see you here. Thanks to everyone else for stopping by. And I will catch you all next time. And in the meantime, for those that are watching on the replay, I'll leave a link to some of my other Rodecaster videos over on the right-hand side. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of my channel members for your ongoing support. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and to everyone that comes and just hangs out, watches, and asks questions. See you next time.